Welcome to tonight's stream. Tonight we're going to be looking at Epstein's hidden testimony and a fake ICE kidnapping that got uncovered, and Obama's election lies. Okay, so we're going to be looking at stories, and we're going to be looking at it from conservative news outlets like Fox, and then we're also going to be looking at the reports coming from MSNBC and left and other left-leaning voices out there. So let's dive in and begin our examination of these stories. Okay, so these are stories that we all have seen in our feed, and we're here to have a conversation around these stories. And let me know what you think in the chat. We're going to be having time to respond to your comments. You can see that the chat bubble is loaded up, and when you send in your messages, it's going to pop up, and we're going to be addressing your take on the news. So let's dive in.
The Justice Department asking a Manhattan court to make years-old grand jury testimony related to the Jeffrey Epstein case public. Paula Reed joins us again. And Paula, you've had a couple minutes now to go through this grand jury ask. Again, for everybody watching, this is just one small part of the Epstein documents writ large. There's a lot that the Trump folks are not asking to release, but on this small part, what can you tell us?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I wanted to see what argument they were going to make here to this judge. They're arguing that all of this is in the public interest. And I will say the Justice Department has not gotten a lot right on the messaging about this effort. But here it appears that the Attorney General Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche, they're at least striking the right tone. Look, I don't know if this is going to work, but what they're writing here, they're saying, quote, public officials, lawmakers, pundits, and ordinary citizens remain deeply interested and concerned about the Epstein matter. They are noting the fact that in other places they have released portions of grand jury transcripts after concluding that the Epstein case qualifies as a matter of public concern. After all, Jeffrey Epstein, they say, is, quote, the most infamous pedophile in American history. The facts surrounding the Epstein case tell a tale of national disgrace. They argue the grand jury records are thus critical pieces of an important moment in our nation's history. They also argue that they understand there are privacy interests for victims and accusers, and they believe that a lot of the privacy concerns are diminished by the fact that Epstein is, of course, deceased, but they're willing to work with prosecutors to try to redact anything that could potentially impact victims. So the arguments here, they are well articulated. As you have said, though, this is just a tiny portion of the evidence that exists, and now the judge will likely want to allow those accusers, victims, their lawyers to weigh in on this possibility, because grand jury material is by default confidential. And look, even if the judge decides that he will release some of this, there are still going to be questions about all the rest of the material that the Justice Department itself has the power to release and has not done so.
Well, I would say that the DOJ should have done this from the very beginning. I don't know if it was necessary for a dog and pony show where they promised that Epstein documents would drop months ago, and they failed on those promises, and then they turn around to say that there's nothing to see here. Okay. There's a lot to unpack with respect to this conversation, because for the last several weeks we've been talking about it. Of course, you all know my position on the whole on the way the Trump administration handled this situation. I don't agree with the way they handled it. All right, and I called them out. I've been accused of being a Trump shill. Well, I spent the last week opposing their take on the entire thing and how they handled it. However, with this move to release sealed grand jury testimonies, this should have been the first move. But do you know what would have happened? Now, I'm just going to straw man this whole situation, because we've seen how left-leaning voices and Democrat voices and MSNBC and the like to go the opposite direction. When the Trump administration goes left, they want to go right. And if the Trump administration had stood up immediately to say, okay, we're going to release the grand jury documents, I would bet that they will be the first to say this is unconstitutional. They will be the first to say, why are you making the victims, relive the horror of their experiences? There's always going to be someone out there who will say that this is the wrong thing to do. However, I think they should have started with this.
Right, and just to underline it again for folks, this is the grand jury testimony related to the prosecutions of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. The questions and the reason why people want more accountability, Jeffrey Epstein's dead, Ghislaine Maxwell's in prison, is because they're questions of all the other people who may have been involved. They will not necessarily be mentioned in this because the prosecutors were not going after them.
That's exactly right. Highly unlikely that any of those other individuals are mentioned here. But the Attorney General, I really think it's important to note that she said last week that they reviewed this case and they don't believe that they have evidence to go after any third parties. But clearly, the public is not satisfied by that.
Meanwhile, there remain unresolved mysteries surrounding Jeffrey Epstein. Joining us now is award-winning Miami Herald investigative reporter Julie K. Brown. She exposed many horrific details of the Epstein sex trafficking story previously not brought to light. In fact...
All right, before we move on with this story, okay, I opened up the live chat so that we can talk about the stories. I know that there are a bunch of people out there who want to help me to increase the number of people who see my live streams, and I appreciate it. You all saw the chat that got popped in there, and it was self-promotion. I would appreciate it if we don't do that. Now, I'm going to eventually open up the pop-up again, and I do hope that the messages that come in are focused on the stories that we're talking about. All right, so we're going to be moving on to another news report by MSNBC. All right, so here's their take on the release of the grand jury testimony. I want you to watch how these outlets frame the reports about this move by the Trump administration. At first, when the Trump administration says there's nothing to see here, there's really nothing, and we're moving on, they all jumped up and says, well, there's something to see here. Clearly, the Trump administration has something to hide. Now that the Trump administration says, okay, we're going to be releasing the files, let's hear what MSNBC has to say about this.
Something I learned very early on in my politics is either A, don't put yourself in the story in the first place, right? So if a reporter calls and wants to comment on something, no comment. Or B, if you're already in the story, shut up. Right? Stop talking about it. Stop egging it on. You have, the NBC News talking about the Bondi frustration, noting some White House officials and outside Trump allies remain frustrated with Attorney General Bondi's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein saga of the past 2 weeks, seeing the issue as a problem largely of the DOJ's creation, which the AG should be doing more to solve. But she can't, because the president keeps feeding the beast.
Well, if the president doesn't say anything, then you guys will say that he has something to hide. I mean, you guys have done it over and again. We know what you're going to do. So
it makes it harder for her to dial down the noise. It's not just to Brandy's point of, oh, here are the documents, because there's a lot of ripple effect to that. How do you see this part of it playing out, given that Trump now has upped the ante, leveled up with a lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal, continues to talk about this, and yet everyone's looking at Pam Bondi to shut it down by releasing the documents?
If we take the Steele rule of either no comment or shut the heck up, that's not Donald Trump. It never is. He seems to be doing everything possible to suggest there's some wrongdoing that may involve him, may involve others. It looks like a cover-up. He's telling people there's nothing there, after all his people and himself for years have pointed to the Epstein files as the Rosetta Stone.
Okay, so let me know in the chat, would it have been acceptable for everyone if Trump's DOJ fabricated findings? Would it have been acceptable? I know that for me, I have expressed my frustration, and I don't want to repeat how I feel about this entire story. But when you're being told the truth, now, look, I'm not saying that they're telling us the truth. There's clearly a few things that will not be revealed, and we just have to make our peace with it. I've been looking at history for years. And one of the things about history is that powerful people do whatever they like and they get away with it. That has been the story of history from the dawn of civilization. Now, is it right? No, it's not. There are people who will not pay for their crimes on this side of eternity. And that's why I believe in a hell. I believe that anyone who escapes the retribution that should come to them in this life, they will receive it in the life to come. So if they are really serious about chasing the facts of a story, okay, what MSNBC and ABC and the like try to do is stay on the opposition. All right. Now, with the Epstein story, I think that it goes beyond partisan politics because there are real victims involved. If President Trump participated in the whole Epstein saga, he should be prosecuted. He should be impeached. He should be dragged before the court and prosecuted. That's the way it should be. However, never happens to powerful people. But the other side of the argument is, if President Trump was on the Epstein list, that list would have been released during the 2024 campaign, and it would have buried his campaign. The Democrats had it. They had the House and the Senate for 4 years. They could have released it. They didn't. And so it's clear that there's really nothing there. And maybe all the evidence that could have implicated key people, powerful people, top people, may have been destroyed. I wouldn't put it past them.
Of proving this grand conspiracy theory of Satanists and pedophiles and sex traffickers really being in control of the government, the QAnon conspiracy theory. And
when they want to discredit you when you're telling the truth, they start throwing around QAnon and conspiracy theories. Okay, now I want you guys to let me know your thoughts. Do you think that most of the conversations around Epstein were conspiracy theories? Do you think that people spent 10 years talking about something that wasn't real? Okay, let me know in the chat. I want us to have a conversation about this. Today, I'm more relaxed. Okay, I love Canada. All right, I'm here in Canada, and I'm talking about American politics because I'm fond of American politics. It's amazing how the country was built on certain principles, and I really love looking into American politics. But one of the things I love about Canada is the weather. It just changes on you. A few days ago, I couldn't stand the heat. I had to, turn off the lights in the early parts of the last stream. Today, it's cold and I'm wearing a hoodie. So it's amazing. So tonight, I'm more relaxed. And I would like us to just talk about this story. We're going to go through this. We're going to listen to Dershowitz in a bit, okay, because he was Epstein's lawyer and he was roped into an accusation and a few other things happened. And we'll hear from him. Is there anything to the stories about the list? Is there anything? Now, we're going to listen to Dershowitz real quick, all right? And then he will basically respond on reports about a list and who's on the list.
President Trump is asking, why didn't the Democrats release the Jeffrey Epstein files when they controlled the White House under Biden?
I just said that.
And now, all of a sudden, the Wall Street Journal publishes this headline yesterday, accusing the president of sending a letter for an album for Jeffrey Epstein's birthday in 2003 when he turned 50. President Trump says it is not a real letter. They also write in this Wall Street Journal article that there was a letter from Alan Dershowitz, the former attorney. The article states Dershowitz's letter included a mock-up of a Vanity Unfair magazine cover with mock headlines such as, "Who was Jack the Ripper? Was it Jeffrey Epstein?" And to that, Professor Dershowitz told the Wall Street Journal, they write there in the article, "It's been a long time and I don't recall the content of what I may have written." I'm pleased to bring in now to the broadcast to talk about this and also the potential for a defamation suit now President Trump has against Wall Street Journal. Professor Emeritus at Harvard Law School, Alan Dershowitz himself, and this is his new book you see right here.
Okay, so the Wall Street Journal miraculously uncover this booklet. It's been out there all this time, and it just magically surfaces. Just as the whole Epstein situation is dying down, it surfaces to say President Trump sent a very crude birthday wish to Epstein for his 50th birthday. So it's very convenient, don't you think?
On the screen, he's the author of many great books. His most recent one, The Preventative State. Sir, a pleasure to have you. Thanks for joining us here today.
So I asked the Wall Street Journal reporter to send me a copy of what they claim I sent Epstein because I want to see if it's authentic.
Yep.
I want to see if it has my signature, and they refused to send it to me.
Yep.
As far as I know, they refused to send it to President Trump as well.
Yep.
Why would the Wall Street Journal not send those people that they were writing stories about the claimed letters so that we could authenticate them?
Yep.
I have no idea whether.
Yeah. So they didn't send President Trump a copy to verify whether this was his handwriting and his signature, and they went ahead and put out the story. And from everything that I've gathered, they didn't even put out a picture or a photo or a clip. Just, you don't have to show the entire thing because it was a picture of a nude woman, and they said or claimed that President Trump sent the birthday wish scribbled all over the artwork. And when you start hearing mainstream media say a source close to the parties or an unnamed source, you begin to wonder, whether they are telling the truth. Because if this is the truth, you have to have concrete facts and concrete sources. They did not show a photo of this birthday gift. All right. And then, according to Alan Dershowitz, they didn't even send him a copy for him to verify that this was actually his birthday wish to Epstein. So if this is the way journalism is being handled today, it's really scary. I mean, people can literally write lies about you. And when you say, look, you guys didn't give me an opportunity to verify that this was, coming from me, they say, no, there's no need for that. There are other outlets, and I watched a couple of outlets this evening who were reviewing the Wall Street Journal story, and they were praising the Wall Street Journal. They said, look, this is the bastion of journalism, and how dare President Trump call them a rag. Well, they didn't give the journalistic courtesy that they should have when they were writing a story about someone. They said you had some things to put out there about the person. Give them everything you have and let them respond. But it doesn't mean you don't put out your story. If you want to, you can go ahead and put out your story. Say, we gave them everything. They couldn't defend themselves. Here's the story. That's the way it works, I think. Or don't you think so, in the chat?
At the vanity unfair. My wife and I don't think that's anything I would do. And President Trump doesn't think he would have drawn something like that. So it may be that the whole book of the letters was something contrived by people just to make up mock-ups. I just don't know. Maybe I did send him something. I knew him then. It was years and years and years before he was accused of anything improper. And he sent me birthday presents, and I probably sent him birthday greetings. But I have no idea what's authentic. So let me challenge the Wall Street Journal right here on television. Please send me what you think I said about him, and send President Trump what you think they sent about him, what he sent about him, and we'll tell you whether it's authentic or not. I can't tell you it's authentic based on a telephone call.
Yeah.
There's a chance, though, that the Wall Street Journal, in some of this reporting, didn't actually have the physical document in front of them, so maybe they couldn't send it to you. They didn't publish it. We know that, which opens up the question of a defamation lawsuit. Now, President Trump says he intends to sue Rupert.
The reporter had it, but he couldn't send it to me. That was very suspicious.
Okay.
I mean, normally when they ask you, did you write something? They send you a copy of it, a Xerox copy, and then you authenticate it. I know my signature. I know my handwriting. So let them send it to me and let's see if it's real. Look, first of all, there's nothing to it at all. Yeah, so somebody writes him a birthday greeting years before he was ever accused of anything. Vanity Unfair. That's a clever. I wish I had come up with that. Vanity Unfair. I have no recollection of ever calling Vanity Fair Vanity Unfair. I might have, but it's 22, 23 years ago. Let's see the evidence.
And one thing you've been very forthright and clear upon is that you represented Epstein and you knew that you would be part of whatever documents were in these files.
All right. So here's Dershowitz saying what he knows about who was involved with Epstein's world. Okay. Now, to be honest, and I think you would agree with me. All right. Now, to the guys who sent clarification in the chat, I have a bunch of people who sent some messages. I'm streaming to 5 platforms. All right. So someone on Kick is trying to get me to hire them to increase my numbers in streaming. So I just want to say, look, I acknowledge what you've written and I appreciate that. I like to acknowledge people when they put in the work to chat during the live stream. So thank you for the offer. So here's the thing. All right. The claims that Epstein had a list and he didn't let his lawyer know about the contents, okay, is false. So Dershowitz should know something about that. But one thing that I have found out in my over 47 years, okay, of life is that people lie. And I wouldn't want to say that Dershowitz is going to be telling the truth. He's not going to self-incriminate. He's not going to put himself at risk. And maybe he has a sweet deal with those in the corridors of power. Who knows? But he's about to say a few things about what he knows about who's on the list and who isn't. And let's hear this bit. And let me know what you think. Do you believe him? Do you think he has relevant information?
And a lot of people look at this video that's on our screen right now, Professor Dershowitz, and says, yes, Donald Trump never denies knowing Jeffrey Epstein. He was a member of Mar-a-Lago before he kicked him out. So the fact that there may be something in there, which President Trump does say is fake, and it is not, he says it's not his letter. But even if there was something, what gives? There is a statute of limitations. There's all sorts of things that are going on here. Why is this now something where the Democrats never cared, but all of a sudden, very high interest here with this publication? Which
is very true. The Democrats for all this time had said that this was a conspiracy theory. You heard the guy in the MSNBC footage who said that it's a QAnon conspiracy. You had them opposing this narrative, and suddenly they want to see something. It's really strange.
What this reminds me of when Geraldo Rivera said he's going to open up Al Capone's vault, and everybody in the world watched on television as he opened it up, and there was nothing in it.
There's nothing.
I think that's what's happening here. I don't think when all these documents come out, and they will come out, and they should come out, I call for them to come out from day one, I don't think we're going to see anything. We're going to see two groups of people who've already been publicly accused, people like George Mitchell and Bill Richardson and Ehud Barak. Everybody knows they've been accused. They may have been falsely accused. We don't know, but we know that. Then there are a couple of names of people that haven't been released, but these are obscure people. I know who they are. Nobody's ever heard of them. So I don't think there are any smoking guns here.
Yep. All right. So Epstein's former lawyer says there's no smoking gun. Do you believe him? Do you believe him? Okay. Do you believe him? Because for 10 years we've been hearing that there's something in there. Well, let's wrap up this interview for a bit, and then we'll move on to the next story.
The Attorney General Pam Bondi is going to try and get this grand jury testimony unsealed. I don't know how simple that process is. Some say you can't just say you want it. You need to really compel a judge. Will she be able to unseal some of these transcripts here? And even if they then redact them and release them, what do you see that process being like? And would there be anything in there that's of interest?
I don't think so. There shouldn't be redactions. Everything should come out. Let me give you an example. A woman named Sarah Ransom said she had videotapes of Donald Trump of Bill Clinton, of Hillary Clinton, of Richard Branson, and other people, videotapes of them having sex with young children. And she wrote to the New York Post, a woman named Maureen Callahan. You can confirm it with her. And then investigation, but she made up the whole story.
Yep.
So, we know there are people who've made up stories. In my case, a woman accused me, and then she acknowledged that she may have confused me with somebody else, may have misidentified me and withdrew her lawsuit.
But that's crazy. Okay, now how would you feel if someone publicly accused you of something heinous, and suddenly they come out to say, well, I'm sorry, I thought you were someone else, and your life is ruined? How would you feel about that? I want us to err on the side of caution, but when it is clear that someone has committed a crime, then they should be held accountable. It's really as straightforward as that. People are innocent until proven guilty. Not people are guilty until they have to prove themselves innocent. That's not the way the legal system works in the United States. All right, so that's Dershowitz. He says that there's no smoking gun. There's nothing to see here. He has some information that verifies that certain people who were expected to be on the list may not be on the list, but we do know who was on the list. And it is neither here nor there. The hidden testimonies from the grand jury may be tainted in the sense that the people who are going to be giving testimonies may not have proof. They may be smearing certain parties who are being named in the grand jury hearings. So we will be waiting to see what's in there. And according to Dershowitz, it's very clear that this isn't an instant request. The DOJ can request these grand jury hearings, but there are several layers of resistance that have to be scaled. For example, there will be those who gave the testimonies during the grand jury hearings who will say, look, I don't want my testimony to be made public, and they could sue for their part of the testimony to be withheld. And there will be redacted portions of the grand jury hearing. So I don't think at the end of this entire thing, anyone will be happy with what comes out in the end. So let me know what you think of this story about the grand jury release. Do you think, now I've told you what I think, I don't think we're going to be happy with what we see. It's just going to be meh. It's just like, oh, you're expecting something, and then suddenly it just didn't amount to much. Okay, so let me know what you think in the chat. And here's the next story. Okay, I've been talking about the situation with ICE being attacked in the streets, and here's a story that is adjacent to that. All right, there's this immigrant lady who was announced to have been kidnapped by ICE. Okay, and that's the word that the Democrat leadership has been using about these ICE raids, that ICE kidnaps people from off the street, and they say that that is Gestapo tactics, and they use these buzzwords to trigger people into a furor where they begin to see ICE agents as non-human and as illegal agents. So there's a report where she was there's an immigrant who was kidnapped, and then let's hear this story. It's really interesting, so let me not spoil it for you. Let's jump into the story.
A Mexican national in California is now facing federal charges after she allegedly tried to fake her own kidnapping and blame it on ICE. The DOJ says Yuriana Calderon lied about being taken to the border at gunpoint by federal agents, and that she staged these fake photos trying to make it look like she was in federal custody. But the DOJ says that the whole thing was an elaborate hoax to solicit donations. Officials pointed out that she would have had to remove her necklace in an official booking photo. And surveillance footage shows Calderon walking by herself to a nearby van after she was, quote, kidnapped by ICE. Now, the prosecutor handling the case thinks Calderon was motivated by more than just money. Watch.
There was apparent financial motive, and I think there was another motive here. They want to discredit, dehumanize our federal agents. This is part of the narrative to encourage people to stand up to our agents and to assault them.
And we've seen dangerous anti-ICE rhetoric lead to actual violence. Last week, protesters hurled large rocks at officials during a raid in California, and multiple agents were hospitalized in just the past.
Yeah, one of my streams from last week covered this story, and MSNBC called these people protesters. These are rioters. These are violent hooligans attacking federal agents.
Officials during a raid in California, and multiple agents were hospitalized in just the past few weeks, including one who was hit by one of those rocks, and another who was dragged on the side of a van by a fleeing suspect. Trace, you talked about this earlier when we opened the show about this climate, and hoaxes like this certainly do not help.
Listen, it all leads back to our top story, which is exactly what you said. I don't care about the fake pictures. What you care about is the fact that everybody said, oh, yeah, kidnapped. Absolutely kidnapped. This woman, she looks like a kidnapped victim, right? Nobody's questioning it. Nobody's saying, that's odd. It's really odd. Are they saying? So everybody automatically buys this narrative that ICE agents are bad.
And it's weird because it's as if people just turn their brains off. One of the reports said that she called her family to tell her family that she'd been kidnapped by ICE. So if you were kidnapped, how did you get a phone? If you were kidnapped, like, honestly, and the fact that people actually believed it and ran with the story, especially left-wing media, they ran with the story. Yes, you see what we're saying about ICE, they kidnap people off the streets. And Karen Bass went ahead to lean heavily into the story, and we're going to hear what she said in a bit, but let's keep listening. It's just weird. It's weird. It's just like, we need to do more research. Okay, we need to do our own research. We need to think for ourselves and not lean into a narrative. For example, if the story behind the Epstein files from last week had happened under Biden's administration, you would not have heard a peep from left-leaning voices or pundits. They would all toe the party line. The Biden administration says nothing to see here. There's nothing to see here. Anyone who says anything else is a conspiracy theorist. That's what you would hear. But who were the loudest voices when the Trump administration said there's nothing to see here? It was the conservative crowd. It was the conservative right-leaning voices who said, look, you told us for months that there was something to be released. You told us that you had something, and how come you're disappearing everything? We're not going to agree with this until you let us know what exactly is going on. And that's the difference between people who lean heavily to the left and those who lean to the right. People who lean to the right most of the time tend to ask questions. They say, why? Okay. And that's what I would encourage you to do. Always ask why. Why is it that this is happening? Why is it that you changed your tune all of a sudden? What happened? What changed? It's really that simple.
They're bad. They're going in. The governor of California is saying, oh, they're going through summer camps and they're scaring all the kids. And you have the mayor of Los Angeles day in and day out saying they're wearing masks. They're scaring people. They're going in abducting people. Yep. They're kidnapping people off the street. And when this woman makes this whole thing up, everybody just nods their head like, boy, that is so sad for that woman, just kidnapped by ICE. It's crazy that we are buying these narratives at face value without anybody saying, hold on. Just like the sheriff thing. People are saying, initially they're like, hey, listen, it's an accident. It's an accident. Don't do anything because it's an accident. Because social media is going to explode with, there they go, attacking ICE agents again.
Yeah, and the unfortunate thing, the unfortunate thing is that even if there are bad things being done by ICE agents, all right, the ICE agents are not angels. They are not 100% perfect. All right. And even if some of them, even if we have bad actors within ICE, incidents like this is going to, muddy the waters. It's going to be very hard to believe anyone when real abuse takes place. So I think people in Democrat leadership really have to tone down the insanity. It is insanity for them to encourage people on the streets to resist federal law as it's being enforced. Now, let's jump over to Mayor Karen Bass. All right. Now, the story that we're going to be looking into after this is connected to Barack Obama. All right. So we're still going to talk about that story. Let's hear what Karen Bass said about this fake kidnapping.
Well, you guys, there was a story that a Mexican illegal woman was kidnapped by ICE, thrown into a warehouse, being forced to self-deport. And Mayor Bass and all the activists got behind this story because this, of course, was another example of how evil ICE is. And the family, of course, set up a GoFundMe page. I don't know, why, but there's the woman. It turns out she's they found her. She was at a Jack in the Box. Yeah. She was not deported. She was not thrown into some sort of, warehouse facility. Nobody forced her to self-deport, although now she's in a lot of big trouble.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, Rachel, Democrats created this narrative that ICE is the Gestapo, that ICE is evil, and that they're kidnapping and disappearing people, and they wanted an example. So that's why Mayor Bass on July 1st leaned in, put her picture up, and tweeted this. She's a mother from LA, taken out of her car on her way to work, and then held in a warehouse as officers hoped she would self-deport. No hearing, just fear. This doesn't make anyone safer.
I don't believe that Karen Bass didn't have enough information to say, okay, let's hold on until we know more. I don't, if I were to believe that, then I would be buying into the narrative that Democrat leadership are stupid. Yeah, if I were to buy into that narrative. Okay, so I don't treat people who are left-leaning as, I don't like the idea that one should think that they are stupid. Okay, there's always a reason why people on the left lean heavily into the narratives, but for Mayor Bass as a politician, it serves her cause to lean into these stories. So she has access to get information from law enforcement and from ICE to know what's going on, but when she steps in front of the camera, she has to gin up her base. She has to stay with her narrative. She can't wake up tomorrow to say, okay, I've been wrong for the last 3 months. Okay, let's comply with federal law. She can't do that. That would damage her, because do you know what? People in her base expect her to go harder left with her narrative. And that's a problem for a lot of Democrats. They would really like to be moderate, but the crowd that they've pulled into the Democrat Party are calling for more extreme resistance against the federal government. And you know what? It's their fault. They created that crowd with the narrative and the rhetoric that they've been pushing out there.
But here's the problem. She faked her kidnapping, and DHS called him out yesterday, tweeting this: Mayor, you pushed a hoax. There is still time to delete this. This woman was never arrested or kidnapped by ICE or bounty hunters. This criminal illegal alien scammed innocent Americans for money and diverted limited DHS resources from Los Angeles. I think that's called caught red-handed.
Yeah. It really is amazing. Democrats are so snake-bit when they pick these, their poster children.
Yeah, and Democrats seem to lean into criminals who simply cry that they are victims. It's frustrating. Look, if I grew up in the United States, it's very likely that I would have been Democrats up to the point where maybe I began to think for myself. All right. My mother okay, even while we were in Nigeria, she loved Democrat presidents because they're always good looking. All right. She loved Jimmy Carter. She loved Bill Clinton. They're always good looking. Okay. They charm the women, and then the women indoctrinate the children into voting Democrat. So that's the way it works. Okay. But the problem is the present day Democrat Party has gone unhinged. They rush out to defend and to fight for criminals. And when they're called out, they respond with the fact that, oh, you're a bigot, you're not compassionate, you need to be more compassionate. So, what do you think of this story? What do you think of this story? This is yet another example of the kind of narrative or the result of the narrative that the Democrat leadership has been pushing and left-wing media has been pushing. It enables this kind of behavior. It enables this kind of behavior. What do you think of this story? Okay, I've already told you my thoughts. I don't agree with this kind of incident taking place, because if there are real crimes being committed by ICE agents, this is muddying the waters. You can't see any of that, because when the next real crime happens, you're going to just say, okay, maybe it's just another hoax. We don't believe them. Okay, this is the boy who cried wolf once too many times. All right, so let's look at this story with respect to Barack Obama. Barack Obama is staring down the barrel of an investigation because of the Russia collusion hoax that the Democrat Party, under his leadership, began to push for 4 years. And even till today, there are people in my comment section who still call President Trump a Russian agent, because that accusation has not been retracted. They pushed it for 4 years, and even when they stopped pushing it, they didn't go public with it. So now we're going to be hearing a few things about this story. Okay, so we're going to start with MSNBC. I want to start with MSNBC because they will say a few things, but they will say nothing. And while I was doing research for this story, I tried to find something that was full frontal about this story. And you know what? They did not. It wasn't really covered by left-wing media. So let's hear what MSNBC has to say in part, and then we will go into the other outlets to see what they're saying, the story behind this whole incident, because we've heard about it for a long time, that Trump was a Russian agent, that Russia, that there was a collusion between the Trump campaign in 2015 and Russia to steal the 2015 elections. We were told that. So let's hear what the truth is.
Jonathan Lemire, let's talk about polls really quickly. CNN poll came out yesterday, showed Donald Trump's approval rating at 42%, showed the big, bad, beautiful bill, or whatever they're calling it, way upside down. I mean, 65% or so people are against it. Showed how much? 61% against the big, beautiful bill. There we go. 39% approve. Upside down there, there's another one about Democrats who are less popular than ever, lowest approval ratings ever. But the one that has to be standing out to the White House and also to other Republicans, they're looking and seeing how Donald Trump is doing with his base, because we keep hearing that his base is moving away from him with all of these podcasters and online influencers, was Donald Trump's approval rating with Republicans. It is sitting around 88%. In the Quinnipiac poll, it's up to 90%.
So this is basically all MSNBC does for most of this report. They talk about the polls, they talk about Democrats dropping in the polls, nothing about the Russia collusion story. I just wanted to play this. This is going to go on and on and on. They will talk about everything else, but not the story that has been making the rounds. Go to MSNBC's YouTube page or YouTube profile or their playlists. You will not find one story about what you're about to hear.
So on his very first day in office, President Trump signed an executive order announcing that the federal government would, quote, take appropriate action to correct past misconduct related to the weaponization of law enforcement and the weaponization of our intel community. No person alive today knows what it's like to have the full force of the federal government turned against you better than Donald Trump. Well, he does not want any other Americans to have to go through what he went through, because President Trump, frankly, has been bent to hell and back. And it all started at the beginning of his first term with the totally phony Russia hoax. We spent 3 years unpeeling every layer of that onion on this program with John Solomon and Greg Jarrett and Sarah Carter and others. Today, we're learning another shocking detail about the early days of that sham investigation. We have a newly declassified report prepared for President Barack Obama back in December of 2016, right after Donald Trump won, specifically stating, quote, Russian criminal activity failed to reach the scale and sophistication necessary to change election outcomes. And they were talking about one place in Chicago.
All right, so the report on Barack Obama's desk before the election held in November of 2015 was that the Russian, Russian organized crime did not have the sophistication to affect the elections. Let's keep going.
Now, the deep state did not like the assessment. That was put together by career people, rank and file people. But when the politicized people around Obama got it, guess what? It changed. They never let Obama see it. Then when he asked them to prove that Russia meddled in the election, they just simply complied and they turned it on its head. And frankly, in many ways, you can say they polluted what was real intelligence and they turned it into poison. And they did it to destroy one man. Is it any wonder that there are now reportedly criminal investigations, this conspiracy investigation by Kash Patel underway, and it specifically names Comey and Brennan. All right, here to give us all the details and bring us up to speed with reaction, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. She declassified this report yesterday, has many more details. You know, I have this creation of the Russia hoax that you put out on X, that you posted on X, and I'll put it up as you're speaking here. What is amazing to me as I've gone through this cache of documents you've released is they concluded just the opposite. They concluded there was no problem. And then all of it, that was the rank and file. These were career people in the intel community. They gave honest assessments. Then all of a sudden it ends up in the hands of the leadership, the deep state as we call them. And what happened to it? Can you explain what the process and what these documents reveal?
Yeah, thank you so much, Sean. This is such an important issue. And I just want to start by saying that this is an issue that is important to every single one of us as Americans. This is not a partisan issue. It has to do with the integrity and the strength of our democratic republic.
All right, so it's not a partisan issue, but when you go to MSNBC, you don't see this report. I checked CNN and I didn't see this report. They're focusing on the big, beautiful bill and how unpopular it is. They're focusing on ICE agents being accused of arresting grandmas and doing other things. They're leaning into the Trump Epstein connection, which honestly I don't think there's anything there. Not because I'm a Trump shill, but because if they had all these things, during the period where they were trying to bury Trump, they would have released all these accusations, and with information, they would have, if they had anything. The Wall Street Journal receives a document saying that this was compiled by Ghislaine, and she basically let them have it to see what Trump sent to Epstein for his 50th birthday. And all of this is coming out now conveniently, right? Because they want everyone to focus on these stories. However, a bombshell of a story that implicates Barack Obama and his presidency and everyone in his cabinet for colluding to try to deny the American people, their duly elected president. It's crazy.
And it lays out this over 100 documents that you're referencing that I released, declassified and released, spells out in great detail exactly what happens when you have some of the most powerful people in our country directly leading at the helm, President Obama and his senior-most national security cabinet, James Comey, John Brennan, James Clapper, and Susan Rice and others, essentially making a very intentional decision to create this manufactured, politicized piece of intelligence with the objective of subverting the will of the American people, who in November of 2016 delivered a historic victory to President Trump, defeating Hillary Clinton. And President Obama and his team, their goal was to essentially not accept the decision of the American people, and to use this manufactured, politicized intelligence as a means to enact what would become essentially a years-long coup against President Trump. You have gone into great detail over these years of what the effects of this document and this decision have resulted in. Obviously, a years-long Mueller investigation that cost taxpayers almost $40 million, 2 congressional impeachments, endless smears and attacks against not only President Trump, but his family. He had senior members of his team who were investigated, some arrested and jailed. We had heightened and increased tensions between the United States and Russia. The list goes on and on.
The damage that Obama inflicted on the United States is yet to be understood. Right? And this is coming from I am definitely not Caucasian. Okay, he inflicted so much damage on the American psyche. Okay, race relations went terribly wrong under his presidency. Democracy took a U-turn. Okay, America was heading way back to feudal times, because power was being taken away from the regular Americans, the citizens, and was being put into the hands of the deep state. Okay, people accuse Republicans and President Trump of trying to do that, but the Democrats are the ones who have been doing that for years, and it went through the roof under Barack Obama. Now imagine what he did with this dossier and tried to discredit a sitting president, tried to tell the whole world that he was a Russian agent. Basically, was provoking a nuclear power by accusing them of stealing their elections. That is crazy. Okay, it's crazy.
On about the consequences of President Obama and his senior cabinet members politicizing intelligence once again, and I say these words very clearly, to enact what was essentially a years-long coup, subverting the will of the American people in that election in November.
Okay, I want to say this, okay, and hear me, okay. Tulsi Gabbard, okay, if she makes it through the next primaries, okay, as a front runner, sounds like a president. Okay, that's my opinion. Okay, let me know in the chat if you agree. The way she conducts herself, the way she chooses her words, her courage, presidential material. Will America ever elect a woman as president? I don't think so. But it will be awesome to see her. Well, she has military training, so who knows? Maybe the American people will give her a pass. Okay, but she has that presidential courage when she speaks. So who knows? She might be the first American female president. Okay, let me know if you agree in the chat. You guys have been awfully quiet. The only people in my chat are people who are trying to sell me stuff. so I turned off the chat. I appreciate the offers, guys. Okay, they've been explaining that they're trying to help. I get it. But I really want to have conversations around the news. Okay, so let's keep hearing Tulsi.
Now, you referenced this President's Daily Brief document that was drafted for President Obama in early December that reaffirmed what the intelligence community professionals, as you say, had been assessing for the previous 6 months leading up to the election, which was that Russia neither had the intent nor capability to essentially hack the outcome of the U.S. election. As you said, President Obama's political appointees pulled that document before it could be published, and it has not been published until we released it today. And the very next day after they pulled that document, President Obama called a National Security Council cabinet meeting to discuss how Russia interfered with the election. Again, this is the first.
This is December 9th,
President
right?
Trump had already won.
Imagine
Correct.
that.
This is the December 9th meeting.
That came.
So with no evidence and with a report that said that the Russians didn't have the capabilities to interfere with the elections, President Obama, because I'm not going to do what the Democrats do by saying former president, I just say President Obama decided that he was going to tell his cabinet that the Russians interfered with no evidence. And basically, he was telling them the Russians interfered with it, figure out, how they could have done it without any evidence. That's crazy.
That's exactly right. The December 9th meeting, we declassified and released what they called the summary of conclusions from that meeting. Then DNI James Clapper took the lead on what President Obama wanted done, and which was essentially create a document that tells us not if, but how Russia interfered with the election.
Oh, geez.
President Obama delivered the conclusion that he wanted the intelligence community to reach and directed them to find and essentially create and manufacture the intelligence to support the conclusion that President Obama wanted to deliver to the American people. Once that document was drafted, the deep state kicked into gear and did what they usually do. They started leaking this classified information out to their friends at the Washington Post and others who are working hand in glove with the deep state to lay the groundwork for the assessment that they eventually released that served as the basis, once again, for this years-long coup with the goal of trying to subvert the American people's will and usurp President Trump from being able to deliver on the mandate that the American people gave to him when they chose to elect him as president of the United States.
So you had career intel people that came to a conclusion that, in fact, Russia did not interfere, that it had no impact, and they didn't like the assessment, and they have this meeting with President Obama at the time, and they make the decision, a very conscious decision, to pervert real intelligence, turn it into phony intelligence, but also simultaneously something else was happening. And James Comey, for example, was warned about the Russian disinformation dossier that was paid for by Hillary Clinton. He was warned not to trust it, but it became the bulk of information for not one but four separate FISA warrants, ruined Carter Page's life, but also backdoored an ability for them to spy on President Trump, candidate Trump, and transition team Trump. Nobody was ever held accountable for that either.
Will anyone be held accountable? Do you think anyone will be held accountable? All right, so I'm not trying to blackpill you, but we need to understand how the world works. Okay, powerful people get away with stuff. All right, powerful people get away with stuff. However, hopefully something changes with this. I'm not going to celebrate that anything has been done until We see people in handcuffs, people being indicted, people standing trial. And once that happens, okay, I believe that American democracy would have been given maybe another 25 to 50 years, okay, because a lot of craziness has happened within the American democratic system. There are people who have committed crimes for decades who have gotten away with it. And so it's a signal to everyone else who goes into the corridors of power that whatever they need to do, they can do, and they will get away with it. All right. Now, if people are held accountable for this incident that took place 10 years ago, and they're brought to justice, it's all about justice. The media is going to call it revenge. Once the facts come out, the narrative will change. Already, we see that the media is trying to bury this story. The only outlet that I found talking about this, okay, you might have other outlets that you follow, but I check out MSNBC, ABC, CNN, and none of them is talking about this story. However, when this thing has legs and it begins to grow and it gets really serious, I'm curious to see the kind of narrative that MSNBC and the like will have about this. Will they say Trump is attacking his political enemies? Will they say that this is a made-up accusation? Will they say that Trump's DOJ is being weaponized against his enemies just like he promised? Will they say that? All right. Now, there are a lot of intelligent people out there who will believe that narrative. I have very intelligent people in my family. And for the last 10 years, they have believed that Trump is evil and that he's racist and that he's an agent of chaos. These are people in my family. All right. So I don't come from a family, where everyone is rah Trump. So I know that some of you have your own convictions. Some of you may, think like me. Some of you may not. But the truth of the matter is that very intelligent people are falling for the Democrat narrative that Trump they fell for it, that he was a Russian agent. They still believe it. And when MSNBC and the like begin to spin the narrative, they will believe that narrative. So what do you think? What do you think? Do you think anyone will be held accountable? All right. So while we wrap this up, please, I forgot to ask you to consider subscribing, liking the video, sharing the stream with your family and friends. I got so carried away and I didn't ask you to do that. Please do so. And the biggest thing that you can do on this stream is to leave a chat. Say something about the story that we're talking about. The reason why I do the live streams is for engagement, to engage with you and to have a conversation about these stories. Okay, I know you have a life. I know you have an opinion. I know you see things and you have things to say, and I'm just giving you the opportunity to say this, and we can have a conversation around these ideas. I don't live in the United States, but I have family that lives in the United States. My daughter is a citizen of the United States. So I'm quite interested in what goes on there. I have some ideas and I would like to share those ideas with you. So what is the outcome of this investigation? Yes, we know that the Trump presidency was literally being attacked from the inside by deep state operatives, according to this report by Tulsi. We may not see anyone held accountable. We may not. For several reasons. First reason is that has never happened. Okay, where people are where people are where people who are in power are arrested, tried, and put in jail. I don't think it has ever happened. There's always a deal somewhere. Okay, there's always a deal. So let's see how this plays out. Let's see how this plays out. All right. Now, with all the information, now I have the full playlist. Okay, I have the full playlist in the show notes. If you want to go into the description of the video on YouTube, the description wherever you're watching, the link to the full playlist is right there. And I would like to ask that you consider subscribing to the main channel. Okay, the playlist takes you to the main channel. Consider subscribing, consider liking the video, consider sharing the video. I see that some of you have been enjoying the content. Thank you so much for your support. We are looking at having a more engaging forum where we talk about these issues. I started this channel because I got really anxious at some point last year, because I was looking at the world, I was looking at politics, and I was like, look, there's things are just the world is imploding, and I began to grow concerned for my kids. Okay, and what I decided to do was create content where I look at news and politics and share my thoughts, and that hopefully sometime in the future my kids will run into my videos and learn how to think through situations like this and how to deal with partisan politics. I wish things would get better, but historically things always get worse. Things always get worse. My parents told me that things were better when they were younger. I'm telling my kids that things were better when I was younger. And they will tell their kids that things were better when they were younger. Historically, things get worse. And so my desire is to be able to have conversations here that allows not only us to figure out the best way to approach these stories and these incidents in the world, but also leave some wisdom behind for our children, so that when they do find this content, that it will be helpful to them, and it will give them the tools to navigate a world, like I said, that keeps getting worse and worse. So the idea is that we should be able to, chat, talk about these things. You share your ideas, share your opinions. If you agree with my conclusions, that's nice. If you don't agree, it's good to have decent conversations without calling each other evil. And that's really what I want. I want us to be able to have decent conversations without resorting to toxic exchange. Okay, so I want to be I want us to be able to have these conversations, and that's why I try to engage in the chats. I have a bunch of you on YouTube. I have a bunch of you on X, on Rumble, on Kick, on Twitch. The guys who were trying to sell me something were doing so on Kick. I'm going to call them out. So I want us to have conversations and really, really, really rub minds around these things. Let's see what happens with this situation with Epstein. All right. If you can't say anything right here in the chat, maybe because you're busy, you're working, you're on the night shift, or you're doing something with the family, leave a comment after the fact. Okay, you can come to the main channel and leave a comment, and I will respond to the comments. I do my best to respond to all the comments. But if you can leave a chat just to give your contributions before we sign off for the night. It's almost midnight here, and I try to do these live streams every day. Okay, during the week at 10 p.m. Eastern time, and eventually, I know that we're going to start having really, really interesting conversations. A bunch of you are still sussing me out, and I get it. Why is this immigrant talking about my country? Yeah, because I love your country, and there's a reason. There's a reason why the whole world is trying desperately to get into the United States, because it is truly the greatest country in the world. I'm sorry. I live in Canada. Canadians will be upset to hear me say this. I love Canada. I chose Canada, but the United States is the greatest country in the world. Okay, so there's a reason why the whole world wants to go to America. People will give their right arms to become American citizens, and yet some American citizens hate their country. And we need to put out conversations that kind of clarify, how the world sees America in truth, and help future generations of Americans understand what they have to fight for and what they have to defend for the rest of the world, because the world needs a strong America. The world needs a strong America. And so these conversations are really important. I do hope that we get some justice for the victims of the Epstein situation. I do hope so. And I do hope that we get some justice concerning this collusion narrative that we just went through. If you can subscribe, like, and share this video, this live stream. Don't forget, we're going to be back tomorrow, same time, and we're going to be having more conversations. The full playlist that we looked at is available in the video description. So if you're getting peeved that I didn't go through the whole video, it's going to be impossible for me to go through through all the videos end to end, for two reasons. One, I might get a copyright claim. My last video got a copyright claim. My son was crying in the background. I had to shut off the camera and the mic, and because of the few minutes I was away, the owner of the video gave a copyright claim, and I had to chop up the video. So those of you who watched the last video would see that there were parts that were chopped out because of that claim. So you can't play the whole videos, but we can have a conversation around the ideas behind these reports. I would love to have these conversations, and I'm looking forward to that time when we just can't cover all the inputs that you guys are sending my way. Once again, thank you so much for being a part of this stream. I appreciate the like, I appreciate the comments, I appreciate the offer to help me grow my stream from Kick. I do appreciate the engagement from that, and I honestly do appreciate it. So till tomorrow, take care of your family, and I expect to see you tomorrow. God bless you.